1,000 new cases were confirmed, but there were fewer than 250 deaths from the China virus. And while they work through red tape and talk amongst themselves about how best to do all of that, China is showing they're not content to have unleashed the deadly virus on the world. China is now spending billions to buy American companies like Smithfield Foods, AMC Theaters, General Electric, all companies that they have purchased divisions of or parts or whole over the course of the last decade. Just last year, the Chinese spent at least $20 billion on U.S. real estate, financial and transportation and technology companies and assets. Today, the FBI director, Christopher Wray, finally talked about what is going on with China and the dimensions of the threat against this country and the theft of American intellectual property and technology. Christopher Wray noting that Chinese theft from the United States is the largest transfer of wealth in human history. The globalists at the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, the U.S.-China Business Council, other business groups want the United States to please appease China. Communist China is, well, they think they should be coddled so that the Phase 1 trade deal would remain in effect. Seriously, that's what they're asking of the president. They seek appeasement. They want him to drop his demands in an effort to balance trade between these two nations. And the hell with U.S. interests. In a letter to the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, and the Chinese Vice Premier Liu He, 40 U.S. business groups are now calling on the Trump administration and Xi Jinping to, quote, redouble efforts to implement all aspects and agreement, end quote. That's not only arrogant and vacuous, it is predictable from the Chamber of Horrors. Chamber of Commerce Executive Vice President Myron Brilliant desperately pleading, quote, the business community wants to prevent this deal from becoming a casualty of the rising tensions in the bilateral relationship, end quote. As if the business community somehow stands in some superior promontory overlooking the American concerns and interests of the United States. Brilliant concern that President Trump is serious when he threatened to kill the Phase 1 trade agreement and to re-implement tariffs if China doesn't uphold its purchasing commitment. According to the Peterson Institute of Economics, China's purchases under the agreement are far below their year-to-date targets. Through May, China's purchases are at almost $27 billion. That's not even half of their year-to-date target. On Wall Street today, stocks lower, a sell-off on the Dow, which fell 397 points. The S&P lost 34, the Nasdaq down 90, volume on the big board 4.6 billion shares. Great concern about the rising cases of the China virus. Crude oil down about 1% to 40.34 a barrel. The U.S. government awarded Maryland-based company Novavax $1.6 billion to develop a China virus vaccine as early as this year. Novavax stocks surged more than 40% today. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. And my new book we want to tell you about, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever. It is available for pre-order now at thetrumpcentury.com. The book will be released on September 22nd. We urge you to read every wonderful page. Up next, another globalist organization wants more cheap foreign labor as millions of Americans remain unemployed. The acting director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is Ken Cuccinelli, and he joins us here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Breaking news now. President Trump officially moved to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization today. the WHO that lied about the severity of the China virus and then covered up for China's cover-up. The United States submitted its withdrawal notification to the UN Secretary General. Full withdrawal takes 1 year to go into effect. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement reporting foreign college students must now be in class in person this fall or leave the country. 1.1 million international students are enrolled for next year, more than half from China and India. The top 5 schools with the highest number of foreign students, 4 private schools and a public school: New York University, University of Southern California, Northeastern University, Columbia University, and the public University of Illinois. Another globalist organization calling on the president to cancel his suspension of foreign worker visas. The National Association of Manufacturers yesterday wrote to the president with the tired trope that without foreign workers, economic recovery is at risk. Nowhere in the letter did the Association of Manufacturers president mention that nearly 18 million Americans remain unemployed. Tens of millions of Americans lost their jobs because of the China virus pandemic. No mention of that. Instead, the globalists at NAM, the Chamber, the Business Roundtable, and Wall Street, of course, want to fill jobs with cheap foreign labor, later at the expense of the American worker. Well, joining us tonight, Ken Cuccinelli, Acting Deputy Director for the Department of Homeland Security, Acting Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Ken, good to have you with us on the broadcast. Let's start with these business organizations hounding you, hounding the president, hounding the Department of Homeland Security for foreign workers when we've got 18 million people unemployed, when we are a nation in an emergency, and the president has made it very clear what his policy is.
Yeah, and you hit the big number there, Lou. It's the 18 million Americans who are unemployed that are the president's first concern. And we realize there's no perfect, balancing point on this spectrum, but the president made it very clear when he signed that executive order, his first priority in getting this economy going again is getting Americans back to work. And with tens of millions of them being thrown out of work as a result of the virus, we have a long way to go to get them back. Now, we've had 2 months in a row where the unemployment rate has declined somewhat. Last month broke a record for job creation. A lot of that is the credit of the president, who's pushing hard to reopen the economy, but to fill it with American workers. And they are now first in line. And I can appreciate that all these corporate groups would like the cheapest labor they can get their hands on. But the reality is, as you said, not only are there tens of millions of Americans still out of work, but in all the categories where these visa holders get employed, tens or hundreds of thousands of people have filed for unemployment. So it is not like there aren't Americans available. Yes, they need to be matched, and maybe these companies need to pay a higher wage, but that's one of the things we try to avoid with our immigration system is undercutting.
Well, the reality that all of the major corporations, particularly big tech, want to ignore is that the training of foreign workers that they're bringing in under these programs, all but a few of the programs, American workers are more sophisticated in their training, have higher education levels, and unfortunately for them, they demand higher pay, and that is what every one of these companies is involved in, as you well know. I mean, they're simply looking for the cheapest labor possible, and the hell with the American worker.
Well, and Americans overwhelmingly agree with the president that they would rather see modestly higher costs to be sure their fellow Americans are being employed before foreign substitutes. And for the duration of 2020, the president has cleared the field of most of those incoming foreign workers using his emergency authority as a result of the economic challenges we're facing.
Let me read you one of the most condescending and at the same time, I believe, economically illiterate comments that I have heard. And it originates, as you might guess, from Senator Lindsey Graham. If we could put up this full screen talking about immigration and suspending foreign worker visas. If we could have that, please. Legal immigration is a positive for the American economy, and visa programs allowing American companies to secure qualified legal labor throughout the world have benefited economic growth in the United States. I mean, the man is absolutely... Your thoughts about him? I'll let you finish my sentence.
Yep. First of all, you read that at 3.5% unemployment and you have one thought. You read it at 11.5% unemployment, you have quite a different thought. And again, the president came down on the side of American workers here. So he's declared where he is on it by his actions. And he put his name and his reputation on it, and he'll be held accountable or he'll be rewarded for that by the American people. I believe the American people are strongly with the president on these sorts of issues, where they prioritize, as the president does, getting Americans back to work in front of the convenience and lower wages that provide advantages to companies that operate in the United States.
I want to turn to the requirement that foreign students who are not in physical class in the United States must return to their home countries. We've got, 1.1 million foreign students here. How will you enforce that?
Well, in all of these schools at the collegiate level, there are what amount to immigration officers at each school. And so they're being required now to provide new and unique certifications of the nature of the course loads that their school is employing. So that is, we're finally, in my view, making them work for their money and getting a benefit of the existence of this broad network of individuals in each school. So that's how we would do such a thing logistically. Right. And we're finalizing that now within the administration this month.
Tim Cuccinelli, it's always good to have you with us. We appreciate it so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. We'd like to hear your thoughts on all of this. Share your comments. Follow us on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. And National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel will be with us tomorrow, as will be Woodson Center's Bob Woodson, as he is every Wednesday. We are delighted to say, please join us for that. Up next here tonight, Senator Chuck Grassley. He's discovered the deep state, and he's concerned that the corrupt Obama administration officials responsible for Obamagate won't be held accountable. Wow. What was he doing when he was chair of the Judiciary Committee? And about the same thing as the current chair, Lindsey Graham. Just the News, John Solomon, our guest here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, we talk about rhinos from time to time on this broadcast, and rhino groups in Washington are now pressuring House Republicans to support the radical Dems' climate plan. The rhino groups include, of course, the Globalist Chamber of Commerce's Global Energy Institute, Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions, the R Street Institute, all expecting, well, that they do just exactly what they should if they were Democrats rather than, well, some sort of Republican. And it looks like Senator Chuck Grassley just discovered there is, after all, a deep state. The senator says it will be, as he put it, sad if there are no prosecutions of Obamagate actors. And the deep state, he says, is so deep that people will get away with political crimes, which makes you wonder why he was so, well, slothful as the chair of the Judiciary Committee. Joining us tonight to take up all of this is John Solomon, award-winning investigative reporter, editor-in-chief of Just the News. Great to have you with us. Do you find it even a little bit amusing that of all people, Chuck Grassley would be talking as if he had just discovered what's at stake here going into the presidential election?
Well, no, not at all. Senator Grassley early on was one of the people who got us the struck emails when other people were saying there was no collusion, there was no conspiracy against the president. He did a lot of the early groundwork to try to find the documents and evidence that now have become part of the narrative that showed that the president was targeted by false accusations by a bureaucracy intent on removing him from office. But I think the frustration that's in Senator Grassley's voice is being voiced by more and more Republicans every day. And this is why. There is overwhelming evidence in the public record now that crimes were committed inside the Russia investigation, falsification of documents, false testimony, false representations before the FISA court. And we are now 3 years into that revelation, and nobody really has been brought to justice in the courts. And I think that's why people are frustrated. My sources tell me there's a lot of activity. I'm seeing personally activity behind the scenes that the Justice Department is trying to bring those first indictments. And I would look for a time around Labor Day to see the first sort of action by the Justice Department. But for those who know the real story and see all this evidence sitting out in open, it is overwhelmingly frustrated to see no action.
Yeah, and it's, let's be honest, I mean, this has been slow walked by Republican rhinos as well as radical Dems over the course of the past 3 years.
That's true. Listen, Paul Ryan's Congress had an opportunity. Yeah, you're right, Lou. Paul Ryan's Congress 2018.
And Mitch McConnell's Senate as well.
That's right.
That's my view.
That's very true.
It's sickening to see what's happening. Do you think there will be prosecutions before the elections?
I'm seeing a lot of activity consistent with building prosecutions and preparing for criminal plea bargains. That doesn't mean it will happen until someone signs and until they bring it before the grand jury. You never know if it's going to happen, but I'm seeing a lot of activity consistent with that. I hear from people, defense lawyers, people on the prosecution side, that there are some complications with COVID-19 just slowing down the grand jury process. But everything I'm seeing on the ground, real reporting, suggests that there's an ongoing criminal investigation intent on bringing indictments and possibly some plea bargains, and that the first actions, the first evidence of it in the public will probably be around Labor Day. That's an awful long time to wait, but I do see activity that looks like they're building a criminal case right now.
Well, we're all hoping you are exactly right. You've got a damn good track record, so we're pulling for you on another one. Let's turn to the false allegations about the Russian-born scholar in Britain, and the pretext that was created by the FBI, the CIA, as a predicate for what became a persecution of General Michael Flynn.
Oh, it's such a tragic story of just outright false lies being put into the media, being put into documents, being bandied about by informants, and becoming the basis for an investigation for which there was no factual basis. It was all false. Everything that was said about General Flynn, about the scholar, was provably false at the time it was said, and yet we persisted with an investigation, persisted to ruin General Flynn's career for quite some time. When this is all done, the people that were involved in that need to be brought to account. It's a sickening episode in American law enforcement history.
You know, we don't have time to get into it, but Stephen Halper, we just don't hear the name anymore. I wonder why.
I think you're going to hear something more about him in the next week or so. I'm working on a story looking at some of his activities in this investigation, and I think we're going to learn some new things about Stefan Halper very soon, Lou.
Look forward to it, John. Thanks for being with us. John Solomon, justthenews.com. Up next, more on the radical left's attack on Well, Massachusetts Rhino Governor Charlie Baker is ignoring the concerns of President Trump. He signed a bill that would allow all Massachusetts voters to vote by mail. Last month, President Trump specifically warned mail-in voting will lead to the most corrupt election in our history. But supporting the president is of absolutely no concern for Baker. Back in February, the Rhino governor of Massachusetts was asked whether he would vote for the president in the Super Tuesday primary. Baker said, quote, "As I've said many times, I didn't vote for the president last time, and I'm not going to vote for him this time." Why does he call himself a Republican? You wonder. Breaking news now. A new report warns mail-in voting is not only susceptible to fraud, but also could waste a lot of taxpayer money. The Honest Elections Project claiming printing and mailing ballots to all registered voters, including dead and ineligible voters on outdated rolls, will be costly and waste, well, scarce resources. The report says a number of states are already reporting huge numbers of unclaimed, undeliverable ballots. I wonder what will happen with those ballots. Well, joining us now is former Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach. He's running for the U.S. Senate from the great state of Kansas. Chris, good to have you with us. Let's start with voter fraud. I know there's no surprise to you here, but governors just don't, the radical dim governors are having a ball with this. It's clear that they want, the Democrat Party wants these mail-in votes, and they want them for only one reason, to assure victory.
Yeah, that's right. As you and I have discussed before, Lou, there are approximately 24 million additional names on the voter rolls across America of people who are deceased or who have moved out of state or double registered under a maiden name and a married name. And they want those 24 million extra ballots to be sent out, and that will be a huge opportunity for fraud. And it just blows my mind that a Republican governor is going along with this madness. And once again, we see the rhinos attacking the conservative president, attacking the things that we conservative have shown to be true. But so often the Republican Party turns its fire upon itself and, unfortunately, against the president.
Well, and also against you, looking at the latest, we say that the Mitch McConnell-related PAC is turning its fire on you. Clear, and you are, we should point out, the front runner right now going into the election. The polling has you in first place by 9% in the latest Daily Cause Civics poll. Yet this is not pleasing to the Republican establishment. How big a deal is it, and how much trouble is it causing for you not to be favored by Mitch McConnell?
Well, once again, the establishment is doing this and attacking the conservative frontrunner, spending over $2 million, they say, in my race, which is a lot of money in Kansas. They should be saving that $2 million to support whoever it is that comes out of the primary and spend it against the Democrat. How about that for an idea? And of course, they're also always attacking the people most loyal to President Trump. As you know, Lou, I was with President Trump in the 2016 campaign, have been with him all along, and have advised him for the last 4.5 years. But instead, the establishment favors an anti-Trump rhino who favored John Kasich in 2016. So they're betraying the president. They're betraying his agenda, too. You and I, Lou, have talked about the border wall since long before people were talking about a potential President Trump. We were talking about it 20 years ago. And I've also, in the last year, led the construction of multiple privately funded sections of border wall. And my opponent has mocked President Trump and his border wall. So here you again see the establishment going against the conservative, going against the president, and going against the president's agenda, once again.
The Republicans actually make up two parties now, don't they? The establishment rhinos, who are basically operating as if they were unaffiliated, and the president's agenda. That agenda, by the way, makes him the historic president who deserves re-election, in my judgment, without even a moment's reservation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this president has been a disruptor, and he has spoken for not just Republicans, but for the American people. And that's why he's appropriately labeled a populist. And the establishment hates it. And the establishment of the Republican Party hates any conservative who comes up and is speaking in the same terms and the same tones as President Trump. They always want to go with someone who's more malleable. They're already looking toward a post-Trump Republican Party. They don't like the Trump Republican Party. And so that's why you have Republican leadership in both houses actively undermining the president and undermining those people who dare support the president over the establishment.
And that is precisely how the Republicans lost the House in 2018. Chris Kobach, give them hell and have some fun. Good to have you with us. Up next, Red Storm Rising. FBI Director Christopher Wray says China is a serious problem. He suggests that he does have the resources necessary to combat the communist regime. Dr. Michael Pillsbury with the latest on that and more. We'll be right back.